From a highly secure network of top secret locations across North America, this is the Spurs Insider. Second week of the regular season, a lot to talk about. I'm your host, Mike Finger, joined as always by Express News Spurs beat writers Jeff McDonald and Tom Orsborn, with sports editor Nick Talbot. Had quite a week of basketball. Went sort of as we predicted on the podcast, which has been a theme on this podcast so far this season. We're seeing what's coming, what we did not see coming, and what we're obviously going to start with this week is the absence of Hall of Fame head coach Gregg Popovich, who before the Minnesota game was not with the team on Saturday. It was announced that he was staying at home, that he was under the weather. It turns out that there was a health issue that has led to what the team is categorizing as an indefinite absence. In the meantime, assistant coach Mitch Johnson will take over for as long as needed. Jeff, you and I have been out here on this trip in Los Angeles, headed to Houston. You're headed to Houston later today with the team. How would you just summarize what's kind of been a surreal few days around the Spurs?
I would call it a surreal few days around the Spurs. It's been pretty surreal.
And I think, not to cut you off, but I think the important note here is that, yes, Gregg Popovich has missed games before, many of them over the years, one here, two there, dating back to, I think, 2012. He missed a couple games, a couple in 2016, one here or there in the past few years. But this is the first time it's been indefinite, right?
Yeah, this is the first time. Usually it is pretty clear when he misses games. Hey, the Spurs make it pretty clear. Hey, he's going to miss these 2 games. We expect him back on XYZ date. And there's none of that this time around because they don't know. Nobody knows. What we do know or have been told is that Pop is okay. Whatever that means. I guess he's not in any imminent.
Don't speculate there. They say he's okay.
We say he's okay.
And just
whether that means he's okay enough to coach
right.
Quickly,
right.
Soon is we don't know that. We just know that we've been told he's okay.
And we have to be very careful on the podcast not to do too much speculation. But I think one theme in talking to people throughout the organization, just the general vibe of what's going on, like there is not a sense that he's going to be back this week before we do our next podcast. Like I guess that is a possibility because all they've said for sure is he's not on this trip, which ends Wednesday in Houston. But this does not seem, Tom, you can chime in here too. You've been talking to people. It does not seem like something that's going to bring him back anytime quickly.
Yeah, a good source, and we only talk to good sources, right? But a good source told me that, he's okay, just needs some rest. The Spurs, of course, as is their, traditional way of doing things, they haven't disclosed what exactly is wrong with him. And Pop is a very private person, as we all know. But, that's, he's okay, just needs rest. Mitch Johnson's comments, which you guys gathered last night, seem to be optimistic, about a return at some point. It is, of course, indefinite, but he seemed to be optimistic about a return.
Well,
maybe not. Reading the comments this morning or last night, that's what I thought.
Mitch Johnson. I guess we can go through the minutia of this if people care. First of all, I'm not sure how many people. I think that one safe thing we can say is the circle on this is really tight, and there's lots of people in a professional basketball organization. I'm not sure how many, like I don't think it's common knowledge throughout the whole organization what exactly is going on, partly because, like Tom said, Pop is a very tight person. I don't think this is something they're broadcasting like on their company Slack channel that Pop has XYZ or whatever. Um, Only a few people I think are really in on this. Another thing about Mitch's comments, yes, by the letter of what he said,
Mm-hmm.
he will be okay. He is okay. Um, we can't wait to have him back. But there was also a deal where he walked in. We were told he was going to make an opening statement pregame, and this was the typical NBA mandated pregame head coach's availability. So that wasn't out of the usual for Mitch Johnson or whoever was acting Spurs head coach to come in and talk to us before the game. What was kind of striking to me, and Jeff, you can chime in here, was Mitch started it with kind of this tribute to Pop, and like it was heartfelt. He talked about the legacy that he's had in San Antonio, how much he's meant to the organization, how much he's meant to Mitch personally, and that might have just been Mitch being nice and showing respect, and that could be that harmless. And part of the problem with a podcast like this is maybe I am making too much of certain things, but just to hear that in that setting, that did not that sort of reiterated to me that they don't expect him back next week. Did I make too much of that, Jeff, or is there a sensitive way to discuss what I just said in a better way than I just said it?
I mean, I think if you are, I can see why you'd make that assumption or have that speculation. I mean, I think if you want to read tea leaves, that's a good leaf to read.
Yeah,
But also, I would reiterate, we know nothing,
right.
and so it's hard to sit here and speculate this and that. If you're just reading people's vibes
Mm-hmm.
and reading the room, yeah, that did strike me as well. Like you said, that it began with this kind of 3 or 4 sentence tribute to Pop and all he's meant to the organization.
Mm-hmm. And on the positive side of the vibes, we should be fair. On the positive side of the vibes, like the no one is morose about this.
Yeah.
From the players to the coaches to the staffers. Like there's no one hanging their heads like this is worse than anybody thinks it is. It's just a very surreal, like I said in the opening, a surreal story to be around. Probably not conducive to our usual nonsense on this podcast. We're trying to be grown-ups this week. And so I guess to transition to the basketball part of it.
If we're grown-ups for this entire podcast, that's going to freak people out too.
I know. I think we should. This is a perfect segue into what Mitch Johnson said. His goal was, his objective in taking over for Gregg Popovich. Maybe it should be our goal here: regularly scheduled programming. He's going to give the same messages that Pop gave, run the same plays, same schedule, same team dinners, and just try to make it normal. How normal can it be, though? And do you think that's a reasonable objective to keep on with regularly scheduled programming with Pop gone?
I mean, yeah, that's exactly what you try to do. I think coming in and trying to shake up the whole order of operations is probably a bad move. So
right,
keeping the routine as much the routine as possible. I think that's what Chris Paul told us yesterday. Is like when you're in this business, everything's routine to you. You're used to things happening in a certain way, seeing certain people every day, doing this, that, and the other in the same order on game day. And so keeping that is important. But at the same time, like Chris said, Pop is one of those people that is part of that routine or has been part of that routine. And for him not to be around, the absence is glaring. Like you do notice it, and the players notice it. I don't whether that affects the product on the floor. I don't know, but to answer your question, I think the goal of trying to keep a sense of normalcy is absolutely appropriate and a good idea. How much you can do that without the head coach around? I mean, you're not gonna fool people into thinking Pop's there.
Right. Well, to be a wiseacre, as our listeners and viewers expect us to be, one way they kept it normal was, and you pointed this out, in the sparkling new, dazzling Intuit Dome last night, which I really wanted to hate, but actually sort of enjoyed. Like, it's an amazing place. But your local Cagers, just like they did under Gregg Popovich, were about to win their fourth game of the season and had taken a 20-something point lead. It was 40-14 after the first quarter. A year ago, almost to the date, your local Cagers were about to win their fourth game of the season. I think last year they were about to go 4-2. Last night they were about to go 4-3, and let that 20-something point first half lead turn into a loss. This time against the Clippers. Last year it was a Sunday afternoon game against the Raptors. This is if you look at that history, Jeff, this is where they don't want the regular scheduled program, because what happened after the Spurs blew that lead against Toronto last year?
So yeah, they were like you mentioned, they were on their like at halftime of that Toronto game. It looked like they were on their way to 4-2. They were going to have a 3-game winning streak.
We just went. Tom and I were told by a colleague that week that we're going to be working till June.
They had just won 2 in a row in Phoenix, and we're going to be working till June. Then they blow that second half against the Raptors, and that was the first of 18 consecutive losses for the Spurs. And
wow,
the season was pretty much submarined after that.
I don't think that's going to happen this year. But I don't think Mitch needs to follow Pop's lead on that.
You remember our old buddy Mac Brown used to talk about not letting one loss beat you twice?
Yeah,
the Spurs just need to not let this loss beat them 17 more times. And that'll be an improvement.
I stayed up late, of course, watched the end of the game. Couldn't get to sleep for a while. Woke up.
Oh, you were losing sleep over the Spurs blown lead, huh?
Well, there's a lot going on in the world, Jeff. But, anyway, but
you had a long day too, Tom. You were up early yesterday morning.
I had to get up early too to take care of some things. So I'd forgotten about the game, and then I had my wife made me a hot, steaming cup of coffee.
What time?
At night?
No, this is in the morning.
Okay.
Suddenly the game came back to me, and you guys aren't picking up on the pun here. A hot, steaming cup of coffee, 21 points, 8 of 10, 5 of 6.
Oh, I see.
Coffee. The guy was unbelievable.
Oh, I see.
Every so often you see that, just a guy get in such a groove. But that was, what do you do to stop that?
Well, you could guard him.
I'm not giving him a pass for blowing a 26-point lead, but my God.
There was the one where they just stood there and counted like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, and just watched him shoot a 3 after he had made like 3 in a row.
Yeah.
And James, people probably don't tune into this podcast to listen to us praise the Clippers, especially when the Clippers, I don't think, are a great team this year. And I don't think James Harden is anywhere near his prime, but he had a defensive sequence last night, which, man, you don't say that about James Harden very often, but he had like 3 deflections on one possession. That was sort of the start of the downfall of the Spurs in that game.
You want to talk about
in the old days, blowing a 26-point lead would have been doom and gloom, but I think that you can shake that off in the NBA. Where are we going forward? What do you want to talk about, Jeff?
It's when you're talking about what's happening on the court, I think the big thing a lot of Spurs fans are wondering is what's up with Victor Wembanyama and his 3-ball. Why is he taking so many? And obviously he's missing so many. And is there anything to be done about that?
Yeah. Are you calling me a Spurs fan? Because that's what I've been asking.
I don't know if you've been on the any of this hellscape social media apps, but that's what a lot of the proletariat are talking about as well.
I mean, here's the thing. Before when Greg Popovich was still talking to us, was when he was still on the sidelines doing post-game news conferences. I think one of his last ones, maybe the last one that he did. I think our buddy Tom Orsborn asked him a question along those lines, like, do you want Victor taking all these threes? And Pop told you absolutely yes, that he's a perimeter player, that's what he needs to be doing. But his percentages are not good. I would argue, like, maybe there's some pushback to this. Like, his percentage wasn't what you want from a guy taking that many three-pointers last year as a rookie. He needed a late flurry to get up to like 32.5%. And this year it's really, really bad. And I understand Victor's point. I understand Pop's point. You asked Mitch about it last night, Jeff, and he sort of made the same general he pushed the same general idea that they think they're good shots, that's part of Victor's game, that just because you miss a few doesn't mean you stop taking them. But just with a guy like that, with a guy with that body and on the matchup edges that he could find elsewhere, I think it's been a little excessive.
Well, what I specifically asked Mitch was kind of about the balance between, yes, you want him to shoot some of these, but is there a discussion with him about, well, due to time and score, place in the game, this was maybe not the one we wanted. Yeah. And I think that's the point to dig out more than anything. It's not that Victor shouldn't be shooting threes at all anymore. Right. Like if there's an open three in the flow of the offense, he's got to take some of those. But some of these where it's just there's not a pass on the possession, he just dribbles up and takes one from the logo, or or early in the clock. I think when you're shooting 1 of 8, 2 of 9, those probably have to go at this point. Like he takes some shots that a lot of people would call a heat check, but he's not hot. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I when you watch them play, and this was true last night, what got him going a little bit is, well, the other thing people want to say is, well, why doesn't he just go post up? Last night James Harden was guarding him to start the game. He's got a foot on James Harden. Go down there and just post up and shoot over him. But that's not his game. And he's not gonna play with his back to the basket right now. He doesn't have those moves. And to be fair, and it's interesting, it was James Harden in specific that was guarding him. We remember we recalled last night having a conversation with LaMarcus back in his prime about how much he hated it when little guys guarded him in the post. And James specifically, like, Harden is not known as a good defender, but you put a guy that's kind of up, you're a big guy, and there's a guy that's like halfway up your back guarding you in the post. And when LaMarcus talked about it, it was one of the most open and honest LaMarcus Aldridge's we ever saw, because he's like, yeah, they throw you the ball down there and there's this short guy on you, and like you can hear the whole crowd just humming, wanting to do something, and it like heightens the pressure and you end up just screwing it up.
Yeah.
So I don't know that just go down in the post and post up the little guy is really what we want to do with Victor either. It just seems to me, and I'm no coach, but the way he seems to be working well nowadays is get him moving off the ball towards the basket, and then get him the ball. Yeah, get him the ball on the move somewhere in the paint. Yeah, and then you have a shot to do stuff. I think that's probably where all his points came from last night. All his field goals. He made 2 threes. He made 2 threes, but the rest were Chris throwing him lobs, and Harrison Barnes had him a lob on a break, and that's how he's going to should be doing his scoring nowadays. And then if there is an open 3 here or there, in the flow of the offense, take that one. But the one where he's taking 27 footers with 14 seconds on the shot clock, that probably needs to go away for a little while.
That give and go that you mentioned between Wemby and Barnes, it started with Chris Paul with the hockey assist, of course, but it was a thing of beauty that ended with that lob dunk by Wemby. It looked like they'd been playing together for years.
Yeah.
There's the Wemby thing is through what 7 games this year, it's been kind of amazing in that in at least 5, I think 5 is the right number. 5 of those games where you're thinking for a lot of it, this isn't a great Wemby game. Like I think the second game against or the first game against Houston was a pretty good Wemby game from start to finish. The Utah 5x5 game, that sort of follows what I'm talking about in that, like, you think that he's not doing what he did last year. He seems like he could be doing more. He's not shooting well, and every night you look up and he's got like a dang near triple double, a doggone triple double, 5x5, whatever. Like he's putting up the numbers.
9
It's
blocks
just the
last
shooting
night.
that's casting a bit of a shadow over it. And I know I'm talking to two journalism majors here, but I want to test your math skills. One of you pipe up. Victor is shooting 11 for 50 from 3-point range. What's that percentage?
That's a
22%.
little over 20. Yeah.
All you got to do is double it, fellas. Come on, 22%.
22.
11 for 50.
I didn't hear you
22%. That's not ideal.
It's not ideal. The rest of the team's not exactly shooting lights out from three either, which has been problematic. Keldon Johnson hasn't really got going from out there either.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of a theme with the entire team. I think the entire team's shooting 31%.
Not great. Jeff's guy, Jeff, do you have something on Julian Champagny coming up? I know you were staking him out last night. He's doing an okay job.
Yeah, he's doing an okay job. He's been a kind of a bright spot, not just on the shot making, but on the defensive end as well.
5 of 10 last night from
But
three.
going back to Wemby, I wonder if there's just part of it is he just doesn't want to be known as a tall guy that all he does is dunk.
Yeah.
So he almost feels like, I don't know. I might be psychoanalyzing. I might be putting it, but I don't know. We can speculate on this part of it, right?
No, I think there's a pride in having that complete game. Like that's been since he's been growing up, since he was a youngster. Like that was part of his identity is he's not a prototypical center. He's a unicorn. He's one of those guys. And I hate the term unicorn, but the kids use that all the time.
The kids that use that are like 42 now.
Yeah. The first person who I remember mentioning that to me, like in a conversation, was when Mo Bamba was at Texas, and I went up to do a column on him, and he said he wanted to be a unicorn, which, like that made me laugh a little bit. If you'd have told me when I was a young child that basketball players would say they wanted to be unicorns, I don't know what I would have thought.
I know. I wanted to be a pirate.
Yes.
But yeah, I think there is some of that. Like, I don't know how to phrase it. Like, it's almost too easy. Just throw the ball up there, and I'll go make a 1-footer because I'm 7'5".
Right.
Like it almost seems boring to him, maybe.
Yeah. Well, he's had to face his arch nemesis, a smaller guy, going on 3 times now, in Dylan Brooks. That'll be
Dylan Brooks, Alex Caruso, James Harden. Those have been the guys who've really bothered him. Like in the post, like it's the LaMarcus Aldridge thing that Jeff mentioned. LaMarcus put that so well that there's this. LaMarcus actually, I think, admitted the word pressure or something along those lines of when the whole arena sees that you have that matchup on like a James Harden who's not known as being a defender and you have a foot on him. And like a couple times last night with Victor, he had that type of matchup on a smaller guy. And like he threw alley-oop passes to Sandro Mamukelashvili instead. It's quite strange.
It's the Lilliputians in Gulliver's Travel.
Yeah. To give some credit to somebody on this podcast, every week, and I think Nick was trying to help us transition to that, the look ahead. Every week we look ahead at the games that the local Cagers are about to play. And the first week, everybody on the podcast accurately predicted every game. Last week, I had them going 2-2, but I had the wins out of order. I had predicted the Clippers win and the Timberwolves loss. So far this year, 7 for 7, Tom Orsborn. On the podcast every week, he has accurately predicted the outcome of every game to come. So I have to ask Tom, is this streak going to continue, and what do you have looking forward?
Actually, could I ask Tom, who's going to win the election?
Don't do that, because they're not listening to this until afterwards, and this is an election.
But he's Nostradamus, apparently.
Yeah,
I can say for certain we probably won't know for a while.
I'm not sure you're right about that. I think, well, whatever. Let's get away from that.
All right.
But to look ahead, we have on Wednesday night the Spurs at Dillon Brooks for the third time this season already. The Houston Rockets back-to-back the next night at home against the Portland Trailblazers, at home against Utah, the Fighting Will Hardys on Saturday, and then Monday at home against DeMar DeRozan and the Sacramento Kings. That's 4 games, 3 home games. What do you got, Tom Orsborn?
Well, what is Jeremy's status for Houston?
We don't know. We haven't mentioned that. There's a finger issue. Mitch Johnson did not have a lot of information as of last night. We might know more by the time this podcast reaches your digital players. For that, go to expressnews.com. Sign up for the Spurs Nation newsletter. We'll have all the latest on Jeremy Sohan. But just with that in the air, what do you got?
Okay, so it ends in Sacramento. That's our 4-game.
Yep.
Okay, 2-2. Losing in Houston, beating Portland and Utah back-to-back, or not back-to-back, but consecutive victories, and then a loss to Sacramento.
You heard it here. I think that's a reasonable prediction, actually.
That's
going to be boring.
Doug McDermott's homecoming, Sacramento.
Yep, Doug McDermott and DeMar
DeRozan.
Yeah.
And
you got the same, Jeff?
People. And, who's the fellow that the Spurs traded Sacramento for? Jalen McDaniel. Who? Remember that?
Yeah. To get Doug a spot, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, the guy they waived. Yeah. We Jaden McDaniels is the fellow who had a fun time with Jeremy earlier this week.
Yeah.
We didn't have time this week to get into that, but I before Jeremy got hurt, I just want to say really have enjoyed watching Jeremy Sohan this year. There's been moments and stretches when he's been best player on the team.
I'll tell you,
really has a good attitude, like having fun. We've been joking about how with guys on the team, when Jeremy's happy, the whole team's happy. Harrison Barnes heard me say that the other day and chimed in from across the room that he agreed with that. It's been a good Jeremy Sohan year so far.
My only complaint with Jeremy's start to the season, like I'm a fan of these little dust ups and fracases. Is that the plural of that? I'm a fan of it. Like I think it does bring an edge to the team. But every time the officials have to stop the game and review it and look for flagrant fouls and stuff, and it's just I want to go home.
I get it.
He's slowing down the games with his fracases.
We've got our own Jeremy on our staff, Mike Finger. When he's happy, we're all happy. I go into that press room at the Frost, and if Mike's in a good mood, it just lifts the room.
I'll be honest. When he's happy, it freaks me out. It kind of makes me wonder what's going on.
Well, I wanted to close this week with something that maybe the listeners will enjoy because it's about fracases, and if Jeff McDonald was ever in a fracas. Like, I witnessed this with my own eyes the other night here in a secure location near the beach in Marina Del Rey. I think Jeff met a guy who might help him out in a fracas.
Huh?
I don't know.
Like a notoriously adept fighter. There was this fella who walked up. Jeff and I are just enjoying a nice end to the evening, and this guy walks up and Tom plays into this too, because Jeff kind of nudged me and pointed this fella out, and I said, "Is that guy?" And Jeff said, "Hey, he's absolutely that guy." And so, following the lead of something Tom Orsborn told me, I think 2 decades ago, when you meet someone like this in public, what do you say, Tom? You say, I said, "I admire your work.
I like your work. I admire your work.
I admire your work." And the man says to Jeff and I, "Well, what work do you mean?" And I was sort of flummoxed by this, because is it not who we thought it was? And Jeff's like, "Yeah, that's him." And I said, well, my colleague here thinks that you are William Zabka, the famed Johnny from the Karate Kid movie.
Johnny Lawrence. We met Johnny Lawrence.
And William Zabka says, "Yes, that's correct. That's who I am."
That is something.
And then I did a crane kick and got him right on the chin.
He didn't sweep the leg.
He did not sweep the leg.
He was in San Antonio just a couple weeks ago.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, is he stalking us? Is he stalking us, Mike Finger? We're being stalked by Johnny Lawrence.
That
What's funny, very very nice guy. We didn't Jeff actually did not crane kick him. We did not.
We didn't
really,
yell sweep the leg.
We didn't engage really anything beyond that. He asked how we were doing. We asked how he was doing. He went off to his own table, and then as we were walking out, again, it's like we don't want to bother the guy. Like we're not going to act starstruck by celebrities.
Yeah, we had our interaction, and
we had our interaction, and that was done. But he's across the room, like kind of the table across the room, watching us walk out, and I'm not looking his direction. And he kind of, but out of the corner of my eye, he's got his hand up and he's waving goodbye. He says, "Have a good night, fellas." Like what a nice guy,
Wow.
Johnny Lawrence.
wow.
yeah, I think he got a bad rap in that movie.
Yeah, who saw that movie?
I think maybe he was the one getting
I
bullied.
think that's the entire point of the new show, isn't it? And Cobra Kai, that he got a bad rap.
Yeah, kind of.
The first season, anyway, and then after that, it kind of
yeah.
focuses on the kids. Good show, by the way.
Yeah, it's a good show. There's just a lot of kicking.
There is a lot of
There's an
kicking.
overabundance of kicking. And then I felt like I know it's campy. That's why it's good. Like I liked it. But
Yeah,
I
it's
found
easy.
myself yelling
I can't-
like, "Where are all the grown-ups?" Like there's this big brawl between high school kids in the cafeteria that goes on forever. Like where are the grown-ups? Someone needs to be breaking this up.
I agreed when I watched that scene. There was a lot of kicking in the high school cafeteria. It's
There's
hilarious.
a lot of kicking in the high school cafeteria.
Well,
Didn't Tim-
somebody needs to break up this podcast because our producer Monty Bach
Good
has
point.
doing a great job. He's got a big day. There's another news story this first Tuesday in November that he might be helping out on. Hopefully, we will look back on it the next time we convene for this podcast, and everything will be okay. I have the utmost optimism that everything will be okay. But until we see you next time, take care of each other and keep it real.